Good evening there, Saints fans. Jaden here as we kick off another edition of the Teams Thursday night special. Here, starting early, the teams haven't dropped just yet, which is good because it means we can sit down, discuss, and go through our verdicts before the team does come out. I've got a few old, maybe not so old, few of our originals coming back. We've got Evan and Tom from last week as well, but also Pete will join us in a second. He's just having some technical difficulties. Always like to shout out our sponsor, Southside Pizza, the local Moorabbin pizzerias. We always love their support and assistance throughout the season, and they do deliver some really great pizzas. Guys, we're about probably 10, 15 minutes away from the teams dropping for Saturday against the Bombers. It's not a massive clash for us, but it's a crucial clash for the Bombers. How do you expect the teams to line up this week with us? You know, do we drop? Do we give a few players a little bit more of a run?
Yeah, it's always tougher to tell when you've got a good win like that, whether you mix it up for the new side or whether you just keep what seems to be working. Obviously, West Coast weren't quite up to scratch, so it's not really the same comparison. But yeah, hopefully we keep going with what's gone smoothly, but with maybe a few more of the kids in there, especially with Henry going out.
Yeah, and just before I jump to you, Tom, you touched on there Henry with the unfortunate injury. Hopefully he'll be back ready to go at the start of pre-season. Back in November now is when they push it out to. But who do you think comes in? Is there anyone else who's at risk of their spot this week, Evan?
It's hard to tell when you've got a good win like that because everyone's stats seem to get a bit of a buffer there. I don't know. I don't know if there's any of the senior guys we'd want to risk, really. We didn't have a particularly old squad out there. I'd like to see Garcia maybe swap the sub role potentially. Jones's best game that he's probably had all year, but you could potentially see a swap like Ryan Burns go to the sub and Garcia become part of the main squad there. But can't see massive changes across the board.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for those that are watching at home, share your thoughts on who you think should come in this week and maybe miss out, and who covers Henry, the injured wingman or high forward that we lost last week to injury. Tom, your thoughts this week? As Evans touched on, we had a really good, solid win last week. Even though it was expected, it was something that we haven't done for quite some time where we're expected to win and we did it comfortably and convincingly. It probably should have been a little bit more. Had we been a little bit more damaging in the first quarter. But how does the selection come from here now? You've had a good win against a really weak opposition, coming up against a team now that's 2 or 3 weeks in a row they've been underperforming and they need a fire. What do we do?
I mean, it's probably a unique situation that we haven't been in a while where we had that real comfortable win. I think it was since around something in 2017 where we beat a team by 70 points. So knowing Ross's history probably doesn't make many changes. Obviously, someone has to come out for Henry. I'd put my money on Dow coming straight into that midfield. Not necessarily for a like for like, but trying to nullify Merritt. He's probably our best bet to do some damage on Merritt. I don't see, unless Steele probably sacrifices a bit of a role to play on Merritt head-to-head, I wouldn't mind saying that because I know how hard Steele works on his two-way running and whatnot. But, yeah, part of me doesn't want the side to change too much, but I think from a actual, structural point of view, it would be nice to see some support for Rowe. Whether or not Essendon go to the Goldie Draper setup to really hurt Marshall. I know Goldie's a very good negating ruckman, and he does it extremely well against those kind of younger athletic type ruckmans where, with that new rule in place where you can stick out your hand and stop any of the rucks doing anything, that could really hurt Marshall big time. So it's a risk, obviously, bringing in the likes of Keeler or Max Heath. It'd be a brave move, but I wouldn't mind to see it happen. And it kind of is twofold. One being it would help Rowan for sure in the ruck, and I think it'll provide some relief for him, but also to allow Marshall to push forward. And I think Essendon, if anything, their weakness is their defense. They leak a lot of goals very quickly. And if Marshall can get his hand on 2 or 3 goals and allow Heath or Keel to do a bit of a chip out in the ruck to give him that relief up forward, I think that will help big time. But yeah, as I said, knowing Ross, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just the one swapping Henry for Dow is my bet for it.
Yeah, and look, the comments already come in suggesting the same thing. Dow comes in for Henry. That was from David. Obi-Wan, you think Dow would come back in with no Henry. Jan's floated the idea. Paddy Dow, the sub, Garcia starts. I think both of them should start. I don't think either of them have that sub-type role that we need, I think. I don't think Garcia is getting his full potential by playing a quarter. Let me welcome in Pete. Pete, how are we?
Yeah, good. Thanks, guys. Sorry that I'm late. I got stuck at work and then stuck on the road. So don't say I'm not committed. I'm calling from the car on the side of the freeway. I've pulled into a parking lot, but big week for us, I think.
Absolutely. And we'll just touch on the teams haven't dropped just yet. They're only 5 or so minutes away. But Henry being out is obviously a massive loss for the rest of the year. Hopefully, as I said, he can get back ready for a fit 2025 and start of the preseason. But with one automatic change coming through, who is that? And is there any other possible changes that Ross may bring up?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I heard a little bit about what you guys were talking about. I think the obvious one is Dow comes in, probably as the sub, and then we see Garcia get a full game.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, there's a few comments floating around. Alex started with the idea. Hi, lads. Interested to see what team Ross picks. Caminiti comes in if he passes the fitness test. For Henry, what are your thoughts? Now, obviously, it's not a like for like. And if Caminiti does come in, it probably, brings in a second change. But given that, Tom, you touched on, Essendon's defense has been quite leaky. They struggle quite a bit down back. Is it definitely an option to go with Memory, Sharman, and Caminiti? Or does Caminiti go back to where he was playing before he was injured?
Nah, I think you have to either do it. I mean, in my opinion, Membry probably doesn't get dropped because of his 5-goal performance. But yeah, I don't think you can fit all three in the one forward line. I think the main problem with that, from what I've seen anyway, is as soon as we decide to have 3 key tools, they all kind of run at the same ball. And what I mean by that is they just stay stagnant and there's not much movement. And we saw it when Marshall, Caminiti and King all played on the same side. There's 3 massive blokes there, but they just didn't know where to run. And I guess that comes from our ball midfield use, sending it inside 50. So I do think that Caminiti, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in. Whether or not he plays down back's another question, because I guess, half the reason why we might be playing Caminiti down back is because of the potential battle departure. But I think if Peter Wright does get named, I don't know if he's injured or whatnot, of how much he was out for, whatever. But I could see Caminiti being a good matchup for Wright. But yeah, I think if anything, Ross is quite good at playing the mind games of matchups in particular. So Caminiti, if he's down back, I think will be either against Wright or Jones. But if he plays forward, I can't see us playing Membry and Sharman at the same time.
Yeah, and like what you touched on, I think most of our selection tonight will depend on possible what Essendon may do, and there's probably likely that it will change between now when the teams get dropped and before Saturday's first bounce. Evan, if Caminiti does come in, do you prefer him to stay back or go up forward to his original spot?
I think at this stage I'd prefer him up forward. And Tom, what you were saying earlier as far as a Keeler or Heath coming through, I think that would be a better mix than Caminiti in that. I think looking back to at the start of the year, back in round 3, when we came up against the Draper-Goldstein mix, I think our biggest issue was just not being able to get it halfway down the ground, Draper and Goldstein intercepting it along there, just being the bigger body. It definitely being behind the goals, it just felt we'd kick it one way to Goldstein would kick it back, and Marshall would intercept it in our backline. I think it would be more important to have a body going forward, particularly now we've got Mason Wood back, so that we can actually get past their sort of ruck blockade there. And as far as Camas in the forward line, obviously Essendon's been leaking a lot of goals, but I think it's been through pressure and turnover a lot more than missing marks. There's a reason why Ben Keys got the 5 last week sort of deal. Whether it was the one where he called out to Mackay asking for the ball and he handed it over to him. It was a very different kind of goal scoring there. So I think it's almost a shame we're missing Henry for this. He could have probably stamped down a little bit more on this rather than going for another big, which I think they can handle a bit better with their backline.
Yeah, I think you touched on it really well. The pressure, which I think we've seen for the last couple of weeks from us, that regardless of I even think the Adelaide game, like our pressure was pretty good in that first half, and then it probably died off due to the conditions. But if we bring the pressure this Saturday against the Bombers, I think we're definitely in with more than just a sniff. Just going through some comments. Jules, I think Dougal can cover for right, assuming he comes back into the Dons lineup. They've been sort of ebbing and flowing a little bit with what their best mix is up forward and in the ruck. And as I touched on it, I think that's going to be reason why we might see a bit more of a change between now and Saturday, depending on how they go. Whether they go with 2 rucks, whether they stick with a 1, whether they go with 2 or 3 tall forwards, or they try and go a bit smaller. If they do go taller in their forward line, Pete, do you think we can maybe bring another big in, or do you think our defense, as is at the moment, can cover both the tall lineups and the smaller lineups as well?
Yeah, so I think at the moment we probably could cover it. I think Ross would be more than happy for us to go as is, to try and use numbers to bring the ball to ground. And then obviously if Essendon are too tall, they're going to be a little bit slower. So, our game plan is run and gun off half back. And so we can take advantage of that. That said, if Caminiti did come in, I wouldn't be surprised if he came in and played in defence, and we maybe swing Dougal Howard into essentially a tagging role on Draper to say, right, when Draper's in the forward line, go play on him, then follow him into the ruck to give Marshall a chop out for those few minutes that Goldstein's not in there. And so we might actually go sort of really tall in the back line. The other option is that if Caminiti comes in and plays forward, is that poor old Cooper Sharman ends up the sub again, which I hate, but it's something that we've seen Ross do before.
Absolutely. And the teams have just dropped, sorry to bring that up while you were talking, because I think you made a valid point. But Caminiti is in, and he looks like he has passed his fitness test, and Liam Henry, the only omission due to the injury. Look, I'm going to start with the biggest surprise because we sort of touched on it quite a bit. We'll go to Hammer and what he can bring to the team. But Paddy Dow had a really strong game in the twos last week. I think he finished with 30-plus disposals, really high clearance numbers. He possibly even kicked a goal or 2. Is our midfield going to cope with Essendon's ball brigade? They brought in Darcy Parish back into the line. They've got Archie Perkins. Nick Martin runs through the middle. Zach Merritt, of course. Tom, is our midfield going to cope without that inclusion of Paddy Dow?
Oh, I don't know. I was hoping Dow would get named. I think you look at the West Coast game, and we obviously did quite well, and seems like Zach Jones had found a role in there with a lot of distributing with handballs and kind of knowing his limitations in when to kick and when to not kick, and was quite clean. But that was against not a great West Coast outfit. I think Elliot Yeo was a massive out for them, and half the reason why we kind of walked out of there at times. Parish is a massive, massive in for them. He kind of beats up on teams who don't put defensive pressure. I think without Windhager, it hurts. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. As I say, I really do think that Zach Merritt is the key there. I reckon he's one of the most underrated players in the competition. He's, I reckon, top 5 midfielders going around, more so with his ability not only to accumulate, but also to use the ball really effectively inside 50. And he's half the reason why they get such clean entries. And it's a lot of him kicking it in. And Caldwell's also playing, season best footy at the moment. So yeah, it's one of those things where Sinclair's probably the one that I wouldn't say it's a barometer, because probably Jones has to play well to give us a half a sniff. But yeah, Sinclair, I think last week showed how good of a midfielder he can be. I think against a tougher midfield brigade, he kind of gets lost in there a little bit. Plays much better off half back. But if he's given the chance to not get tagged, he's actually very clean around stoppages. Seeing him live against West Coast, he was first the ball got the ball out cleanly. It did help that Jones was playing well as well. So two of them combined actually quite nicely. But yeah, I think Hunter Clark now plays a more important role defensively speaking. And I think we probably have to kind of go back to when Windhager got injured in that, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where as soon as he got injured, it almost looks like everyone else started to play their role and wasn't reliant on Windhager doing that tagging job. But I think we've got to, rather than think of trying to win the contest, at least trying to negate the likes of Caudle, Merritt and Parrish, because none of them are really too defensively minded. They're all attacking, and Parrish is a classic example of that. So, yeah, if Steele, Jones and Clark in particular can do defensive jobs around the midfield and stoppages, I think that's a really good indicator where we'll go on Saturday for sure.
100%. Now, there's a lot of comments coming from the people who are watching at home, and I love it. All talking about the sub and possibly who that may be. We'll touch on that in a second. But Evan, I know you're a stats guy and love the sort of finer details of, results and outcomes. Battle, Howard, Wilkie, probably the three tools for us down back. But Essendon do have Langford. Peter Wright's been included. Nate Caddy, who's got some really good, strong athleticism. And then you can sort of class Stringer in that mid to tall range as well. Are you happy with how our defence looks? Or do you think that even though Caminiti is listed in the forward line, is possibly just some reassurance down back to allow Battle to sort of, stick with Stringer and that way Caminiti can go to, Peter Wright, Langford and Howard the other one?
Yeah, I'm just having a look through my spreadsheet here. And last week, our backline held up really fantastically well. We didn't have a single one-on-one contested loss in our backline out of the entire group, which is great. Normally we lose 1 in 4 there. Whereas,
I feel like that's a credit to West Coast being poor in the midfield as well. So we take the wins when we can get them.
100%, because they had half as many one-on-ones than we normally get there. I think I'm not overly confident with Caminiti down there, just in a 1v1 sort of role. You could potentially look at Nate Caddy is still a very early forward there. He looks pretty talented, but is still pretty early on. So if we did have to match him up with as in Hammer, I reckon that'd probably be the way to go. That is a pretty intense, pretty tall forward line they've got there, though. One change in their forward line I'm really grateful for, though, is the lack of Guelphy. I know he's not much of a big name, but his forward pressure, his shutdown roles have been great throughout the year. So hopefully when Sinclair's down back without some of that pressure, that's a really tall forward line. I really hope we can get some explosive run off the back there, some really clean exits, no long bombs down the line to their ruckman, really straight down the corridor. I think we've gone for an aggressive list right now, and I'm hoping at least in that regards we can match up well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you touched on the ruckman. They've gone with just the one, with just Sam Draper. Pete, do you reckon Rose licking his lips a little bit, just going, like, this is the matchup I can definitely exploit on Saturday?
I mean, in a way, yeah, absolutely. I think most people would agree Roma's clearly the better ruckman over Draper. That's not to say that Draper can't play, but he's had some injury concerns, and that's led to a bit of up and down form. The only thing that I would say, if you were talking to Rowe, is Draper's got a really sort of bad knack, if you're an opposition ruckman, of getting forward and jagging like really momentum swinging goals. He does it so often, and he's kind of what would you call it? Like a bit of a totem or a spirit animal or something for them, where he's one of those guys that kind of gets the momentum going out of the middle. So Goldstein out, Draper one-on-one with Roma, that's fine. Obviously, Wright is probably then their backup ruckman. The two names that interest me, and I don't know how much you guys have paid attention to Essendon over the last couple of weeks, though, it's Cox and Jones coming off the wing. They're essentially playing as 200-centimetre wingmen that are pushing forward. I think they kicked like 5 or 6 goals between them last week. So I don't mind us if Caminiti goes back or if Sharman has to go back, because I think Essendon can get, like, sneakily, they can get really tall in their forward line, even with Goldstein out.
Yeah, look, and that was going to be sort of a good segue to that next question. And I think that's what they did in round 3 as well. for majority of the year, they've been a very high, positioning team. In terms of when they move the ball, they all like to push up and they get burnt on the counter attack. Now, that's something that we can exploit, especially under the roof. And I think we did that to a certain extent against them in round 3, but we just couldn't put on the scoreboard. And then our ball use was absolutely terrible after half time. But the way we're playing at the moment, I think that ability to actually slingshot from the back, now that we've got Mason Wood back, who's, sort of that link-up player. Membry found some form last week, kicked the 5, but I thought his form in the marking contest and his body work was a lot better than what it has been all year. The 5 goals was great, don't get me wrong, but seeing the actual actions of, pushing his opponent away, he had Barris on him, which is no easy feat to begin with. He did an extremely good job to negate the body contact and withstand it. So if that's how, Membry's going to play for the rest of the year, then that slingshot football is going to be, a really good asset for us. I do get the concern with, Nick Cox. Dersma's another one. Harrison Jones. Durham likes to push forward and score a goal. So it's going to be a collective effort from a midfield and sort of high forward to ensure that those midfielders stay out and we only allow their forwards to kick goals. And hopefully that's obviously not many. There's a comment I want to bring up for you, Tom, from Kenny. Let me just bring it up here. Where is it? Perfect. Here we go. From Kenny. There's no way our team lines up like this. Do you agree with that? The way that the magnets are moved at the moment, do you agree that it's going to be a massive shuffle going forward?
Yeah, I was just looking at. I did see that comment pop by, but I do get where he's coming from. Just doing the maths or the kind of matchup by matchup. Ridley, Mackay, Laverde, they're 3 talls in the back line, and Caddy's a tall. Caddy, Wright, and Lank for the 3 talls up forward. So we're probably 1 tall short either way you look at it, and that probably means Caminiti to get swung back is my best bet. Just because I think tall-wise, if you've got Cox who's 200 centimetres, he's essentially a Mason Wood but taller and lankier up when he floats forward. So I think we need another tall back there just to shore it up. And if that means that Caminiti goes on a right or Howard goes on a right, one or the other, that means that at least we've got some surety down there. I think defensive, from a forward perspective, Laverde's probably not the best. He can play well, don't get me wrong, but I think the 3 defenders down there is not going to hurt as much. And I think Sharman has an ability to negate Ridley in particular. I don't know if Sharman will play full forward and Membry play centre forward, but I would like to see Sharman on Ridley, just because I think he's a good matchup for him. And if that means that he can stop Ridley's intercept kind of game, because I understand how important Essendon's defence relies on Ridley to do well. That's going to help. Mackay's dodgy at the best of times, and I think Membry with his kind of ability to push high up forward can really make it awkward for Mackay. And Mackay does really well when he's on one-on-one against a key forward. It doesn't really move, but I think in the last 2 weeks at least, and I guess the second half against Adelaide was a bit of an outlier because of how wet it was. It shows how mobile our forward line can be with the likes of Sharman and Membry playing that 1-2 combo. And obviously when King comes back, that's another whole conversation itself. But yeah, I understand where that comment came from. And I think Caminiti getting swung back as an extra, essentially a 4th tall, is going to help, because I think just the 3 there with Battle, Howard and Wilkie, if it's just those 3 all game, I think we're going to sacrifice Battle's 3rd man up ability to be a lockdown defender. And I think that's where problems will start to occur. And hopefully for our sake, that doesn't happen too late and we kind of don't react to it so late. Because I know how it's happened in the past where we react to certain things too late and the game's already gone by us. So I think hopefully Caminiti getting swung back probably shores up the defence a little bit better.
Absolutely. Now, while we're on the defence, Evan, I'm going to jump to you. Question from Jules. Stringer is a strong fellow, going to need a bulky defender to shut him down. Who goes to him?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of comments. I could bring up 3 or 4, even more comments to say, is it Dougal? Is it Wilkie? Is it Webster? Is it Stocker? Is it Battle? With the way the defence is playing at the moment, who would you send to him?
I think I like Josh Battle on it, mainly because wouldn't even mind him moving up at the ground a little bit, because I know Stringer goes in and out of the mid there. You need someone that can follow him up the ground. I'd say I'd suggest Stocker or Battle much more than Dougal Howard in that situation, because that's where he's most dangerous, is when he loses his man halfway down the ground, gets forward, breaks through, either kicks it from 60 metres out or manages to sneak something through. So I think Battle does the job there. I think this is also probably the way his season's gone, but I almost feel like we've forgotten Mitch Owens a little bit here as well. Here's another tall body out there that is kind of lost at half forward at the moment there, but the way that they're running tall down the wing, I'd really like to see him a bit further down the ground. Maybe even if we were to play Brad Hill a bit more at half forward rather than the wing there, and try and get him involved if we are struggling with the height, depending on which side of the ground that is. So I reckon there's a couple of changes we can make with that list without relying on bringing in Max Heath from the emergency list.
I think you touched on. I mean, Mitch Owens had a great game last week. I thought his attack of the ball, his contest work. I know he dropped an absolute perler of a kick from I think it was Sinclair in the first quarter, but I think he finished with 15, 16 touches, kicked the goal, but his effort was there. It's probably one of the best games of the season for him. The only concern I have with what you mentioned is bringing Hill off that wing. He's our best kick inside 50 at the moment, statistically. Now, if we take him off, then that's going to give more opportunity, and could be better, but it could be worse for the likes of Riley Bonner and those type of players who aren't as trusted with the ball at the moment. And that's the way the season's gone. It could turn on Saturday. But I'd love to see Brad Hill stay in the middle of the ground, use his pace, use his run. Him and Naz running through the middle, I think it's been an absolute sight to see this year. I think it's definitely something we can look forward to over the next couple of years as well. Battle, you touched on for Stringer. I like it. He's also got that capabilities of going forward. Now, Pete, if we're in a struggle town up forward, Mason Woods played there a little bit over the last couple of weeks, possibly pushing back onto a wing sort of defensive side. Is Battle an option to be floated around up forward?
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely is, and we've seen that he's got the ability to do that. There's been games this year that he's gone forward and played that kind of high centre half forward flank role and done well.
Hawthorn game especially, just thought I'd butt in.
Yeah. And I think it's something that potentially we look at if needed. I'm looking at our forward line. I'm expecting Caminiti to go back, and that then leaves us with sort of Wood, Owens, Membry, and Sharman as the tall forwards. And then you look at, Ridley's a great intercept defender. Mackay, look, you can love him or hate him. He's still 202 centimetres tall. And he, the first half of the year, he was one of the leading intercept players in the comp. So if we get into the habit of just trying to bomb it on the top of a full forward's head, like, they're going to kill us all day. So I think throwing Battle forward, if we can afford it, if we've got the right matchups down back, and we can, get him pushing from the defense into the forward line as an option, yeah, go for it. Because I think we need to stay as mobile as we can. I don't want to see any of the boys just parking themselves in the pocket, calling for a long bomb. You got to get on your bike in this game, because it's the only way we're going to get through.
Absolutely. And Jack's commented, I was meant to bring this up before, Jack, I do apologise, but sort of floating that idea with Battle forward, Caminiti back, Battle forward, I could see it happening. And I think all four of us could probably see that happening. We know Ross loves his versatile players and, moving the magnets around. So definitely a possibility this Saturday. Tommy, we touched on Essendon's defence, how they like to move the ball. They're an intercept team. We saw against Adelaide last week, for those that did watch, that they're a flight risk when the ball's on the ground. Ben Mackay, that's a shout out to you. But how vital is it going to be for Butler, Higgins, the whole brigade up forward? We had 23 tackles inside 50 last week to West Coast 0. So that was a massive differential. How important is it going to be again this week to maintain that standard?
100%. I mean, Martin, Redmond, McGrath rely on their kicking ability to work if they're going to have a chance, or if Essendon are going to win. They rack up the pill like no tomorrow, those three, but unfortunately for them, they can't kick it to save their lives at the best of times. I think Martin in particular. So, yeah, I think Butler and Higgins play a crucial role with regards to their pressure inside forward 50. If they put any sort of pressure on McGrath and Martin in particular, I think that spells danger for those two defenders in particular. Redmond's the one that's probably probably Martin's the most dangerous defender out of the three with regards to his ability to push forward. I'd like to see Butler not tag Martin, but put a lot of pressure around Martin's ability pushing forward. And I've said it, I think, on this podcast before, or video before, but I would like to see Butler further up the field, kind of being aggressive against Martin's ability to go the other way. We've seen whilst Martin's off half back, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on a wing pushing half forward. Whenever Essendon do poorly, Martin is their number one answer to do any sort of damage inside forward 50. And I think if they start to release Martin, if we've got a chance to negate them, I think, Higgins and Butler in particular really have to put their tackle pressure to work. I could see that's why Garcia would be crucial in that. I think when he came on last week, he had 3 tackles within the first 5 minutes. So he's got a manic ability to put pressure on. I know that a lot of people in the comments say that they're going to hate him if he is a sub, but I could see that sub working quite effectively because, he's almost like a dog in a cage kind of thing where he gets released and he's off to the races, tackles like crazy, and that manic pressure in a short amount of time could really cause a few issues, especially if it's a close game, which I can see it being. So, I think if we stop those halfbacks from pushing high up the ground, which they like to do, then I think we've got half a chance to kill him the other way because I think, if anything, Bradley Hill and Ronnie Burns in particular are going to be crucial in this game because, as I said, if Martin can't kick, which I'm hoping so in this game, then I think Hill and Burns, if they get the balls back in their hands, they're in trouble defensively when they're pushing so high up as well.
Yeah, and as I put up on the screen, Ollie definitely agrees that if Hugo Garcia is sub, we riot. And I think he's shown enough to be able to play a full game, even when he had that really good second half against the Giants where he probably could have nearly won us the game. But even his performances weeks after were still quite solid in teams that we weren't performing well. There was no lie about it. And he came on last week and did as much as he could in the time that he had. So I definitely feel like it's time to give him a full game. Chris has mentioned, and I'm only bringing this up because I know a few other people have mentioned it as well. Stocker on Gresham has to happen. Now, Evan, Gresh didn't have a great game against us last time to our satisfaction, but he ended up getting the last laugh with a win. We all know what he can do. We know he's got that capability of just turning a game within a couple of minutes because of his poaching, abilities, and every team needs him. Good teams have a goal scorer that can just poach 2 or 3 goals within 2 or 3 minutes and win games. Jake Stringer's almost similar, bit more damaging around the contest, but does the exact same role. So how important is it to maintain not only Gresham, but Gresham, Durham, for those that go forward, probably Archie Perkins will spend a bit of time forward, Jai Menzies, to really make sure that if they're going to score, it has to be through their big guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, that's going to be where the main focus is. But the more that I think about it, the more almost hopeful I am that we're just going to be able to run circles around them a little bit, particularly in that back line there, being so tall. I believe when I was looking at the Essendon Adelaide game last week, they only had about 6 tackles inside their forward 50, which compared to our 23 is a real big difference there. And I'd just love to see us just bring the ball down to the ground, maybe Stocker, push off Gresham, get it to Naz, and then just no one be able to catch up to him. I reckon our exits out of their back line could be really good there, particularly because, Gresham can be an excitement player. We've all seen that. But at the same time, how many chase down tackles have you seen over the last couple of years, that sort of thing?
I was going to say, is an excitement player when he runs one way, and that's not the defensive way, which we all know. But yeah, you touched on it. I think the ball movement that we've had over the last couple of weeks, again, let's remove the Adelaide game. The conditions, spoke for themselves then. Yeah. But the transition through defense to midfield to attack has been a lot stronger, a lot better. And it may be because it is a bit unpredictable at the moment who the target's going to. And just our forward pressures there, it's, counting for a lot more. It's impacting and it's, putting it on the scoreboard in times that we need to as well. We're going to go through who we think the sub is first, and then we'll go through under the microscope and some more comments. But starting with this team, Pete, we'll go with you first. Who's the sub on Saturday? I
was having a look at the whole team while you guys are having that chat. I think the only option is Garcia, unfortunately. Jones's game last week was too good to put him back as the sub, and we probably need him in the midfield. The only other one that you could maybe justify and say he could come on and have an impact in a quarter would maybe be Wilson, but his weapon is his tank, and especially with Henry out, like, we need him to play a full game. So I think it's going to be Garcia again.
We're going to have a few riders on Saturday before the ball's even bounced. Tommy, you going with Garcia, or you think someone else may be sub this week?
Yeah, I think Garcia is a logical explanation. The reason being is just logistically going through the interchange bench. Clark is your mid rotation, Butler's your forward rotation, Wilson's your wing rotation, and Bonner, as much as people hate him, is your defensive rotation. Granted, if we had two defenders in there, say, I don't know, I don't know, I can't think of someone off the top of my head, but if Garcia was a defender, hypothetically speaking, then you'd probably say Bonner's it. But I think the other reason for that is Garcia makes a greater impact when he comes on, whereas Bonner, I don't think if he comes on, if he was a sub and comes on, doesn't make an impact. Bonner's kind of he fades out, or he builds confidence throughout the game. I think it's important as well, because what I see through Bonner, and as much as people give him shit, it's almost he's going through a confidence patch at the moment. You only have to look at it. I mean, it's a practice game, I know, but at the start of the year, he was full confidence, kicking goals outside 50 for fun. So we know his ability to use the ball effectively. But I think, every time he fucks up and all that, his head goes down and his confidence down. So I think giving him that whole game to do something is probably what you need, because I could see people being a lot more critical as well. If he is sub and comes on and then stuffs up straight away, then that shoots his confidence down tenfold. And I think Garcia's game style just fits the sub a lot better, because his ability to impact games in a short amount of time outweighs Bonner's impact by tenfold for sure.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on it there with that impact. We don't really have anyone to come on as a sub and be that impactful player. Garcia is probably the best bet at the moment. But some comments from those that are watching at home, Bonner isn't consistent. Look, yeah, we know it. Definitely feel your frustrations there, Chris. Evan, who's the sub for you this week?
Yeah, I'd say Garcia as well. Sorry, I thought for a second you were calling the West Coast game a practice match just then, but it was a bit more difficult than that. I want Bonner out there for his mental game, mainly because round 3 against Essendon was the 1,000 metres gained, 17 turnover game, which was just astounding in the worst kind of way. So if he can get out there and have a bit more of a better performance, show some improvement, at least maybe in his own head, he can try and make up for that. I personally much prefer a sub that is a senior player that comes in for that last quarter, that already knows the pressure of an AFL game, that's done it 100 times and knows how to go out there. But if it has to be a kid, Garcia has been far better at just being inserted in the game and just going for it. He had over 10 pressure acts in the quarter he played there. So he does get straight into the game, much more than a Hasty or a Lance Collard sort of can do at that stage. As far as the kids, he's ready to go. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I've got some other opinions, but I want to bring this up for Jules, because I definitely agree with it 100%. And I think we're about 8 weeks away from seeing this happening. The sub rule's a joke. Just have 6 interchange spots, maybe 5, not 6. But unlimited rotations, 2 players get injured, you still have 4 healthy players on the bench. And I agree more. I think the sub rule is an absolute farce. It's an absolute joke. But we got to do what the league tells us to do. I'm going to bring up two names that have been floated just recently now that I initially thought was Dan Butler, being that senior head that Evan you spoke about. I think he's been good. His defensive pressure's been good, but he probably hasn't hit the scoreboard as much as we'd like, apart from that one game. I think it was against Gold Coast, possibly, where he kicked 3. So maybe giving him a run with a quarter and a half to go through the midfield, use his speed, his acceleration to sort of clear the packs a little bit. And then Jules has also mentioned, could Wilson possibly be the sub? Again, we've touched on it a couple of weeks in a row now. His form has started to drop off a little bit. I thought he was good last weekend without being exceptional, but he's kind of having the same drop-off Mateus had at the end of last season. But again, Pete, you sort of referenced his tank is his greatest asset. So we want to make sure we're utilizing everything as much as possible for our players. Going through our list, we always do this under the microscope. I think last week we sort of touched on players, not so much form-wise, but just consistency. But for those that are watching at home, share your thoughts. Who's under the microscope for you this week as we tackle the Bombers, hopefully putting an end to their season? I'd love nothing more for that to happen this week. Pete, start with you. Who's under the microscope for you?
Yeah, it's going to be an unusual one because he had a ripping game last week, but I'm going to put Tim Membry under the microscope purely because the game style that he likes to play is very stop and prop. And last week he was on his bike a little bit more. He moved his body around. He took Barras on, in the strength contest. And you look at the way that Adelaide played Essendon last week, and I look at the way that Tilthorpe and the way that Fogarty were getting up the ground, and those guys are both huge compared to members. And that's what we need members to do, right? We need him to almost be like a shadow Mason Wood and get on his bike, get up the ground and get moving. So I don't want members to rest on his laurels. I don't want him to think I got 5 last week. That was great. I want him to keep doing what he was doing. I want him to keep leading, keep getting up the ground, keep wrestling his opponent out of the way. Don't just stop and do that double foot jump that he loves to do and have 3 blokes come over the top and just smash it out of the park and cost us an opportunity at a goal.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it was round 3 against Essendon. I think he dropped 2 crucial marks, possibly in the second or third quarter against the Bombers. And it was just stuff we've never seen that Membry's done. He's always been known for his good double foot jump. His one-on-one marking ability, contested work, and then his goal kicking. He's always been an asset. And that was sort of the sign for me to be like, oh damn, like this isn't good. But and Jules has touched on it here. Membry had an easy workload last week, and he did. He played on Barras, but against, when the balls come in 70 times a game, you're going to get more than one opportunity to hit the scoreboard. But now, as you touched on, it's time for him to back that up, really work his ass off and get under the skin of the Essendon defence and hit the scoreboard early. He does that, opens opportunities for Sharman, for Wood, for Higgins, those other players. And, we kicked 17 goals last week. We kick anywhere close to 13 or 14. I think we're beating the Bombers.
Just quickly.
75, 80 points.
I'll tell you the game that I want him to emulate. I don't know if you boys remember. He played a game against GWS in Canberra last year where I think he had nearly 20 touches. He played in the ruck a little bit. He was taking marks up on the wing. That's the sort of game that I want him to play. I think we need to get totally mobile this week. I wouldn't be surprised. Play like Jack Higgins won out in the goal square and, kick a torpedo that goes 2 feet off the ground and, just complete chaos, because that's if we try and long bomb it, they're going to get us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tommy, who's under the microscope for you this week, mate?
I think it probably has to be Jones. He obviously had a great game last week and shut up whoever the guy, bloke, whatever his name was, that emailed through copping abuse to him left, right, center. So, yeah, I think if you're doing that, you should sort your head out. But that's another story for another day. But yeah, Jones had a great game. I said earlier on, he knew his limitations with regards to his ability around the ball. Was super, super clean. Was straight away when he had the ball, he gave it to the best kickers around. He knew his situation. There's times where sometimes he almost tries really hard and overcompensates by giving the ball away on turnover. But I think this is a game that will either not make or break him, but kind of is he best 22 essentially, because we know what Sinclair and Steele are going to give in the midfield. We know that Hunter Clark, when he's fit, adds so much dynamic to his kicking ability through that midfield. But Jones, dare say it, if Sinclair and Steele start to get quiet on form on Saturday, it's going to really expose Jones, because Jones needs good players around him to do well. And I think Ross probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Ross really nails down a role for him, whether it is trying to follow Merritt and just get under his skin. We look at Merritt, he's very similar to Neil, and Neil's doesn't do well with a tag. Merritt, I think, is a player that's overcome his kind of dodginess in tags with his ability to run away from it and outrun taggers. And I think if Jones, likewise, Stocker to Gresham, but if Jones can really get under the skin of Merritt or Caldwell or Parrish in particular, probably because Parrish likes downhill skiing in particular with his midfield work. If he really can get in the head of any one of those three, I think he adds a lot, and he tries his heart off. We know how hard he tries, but I think if he can really piss the midfield off, and whether it is give a few shitty free kicks inside that midfield and really try and get under their skin, I think that's his way of kind of negating that midfield rather than trying to beat them one-on-one in contests.
No, I like it. I like it. Before I jump to you, Evan, I'm going to go through some comments because there's a heap of comments coming through. Again, keep them coming. I love going through them. Chris has mentioned his microscope is Hunter Clark, which I don't mind. Again, he's been solid, but probably at the point now where he should have a bit more faith in his body and really start to, complement Sinclair and Steele and be that, next B+/A grade midfielder that we're needing. STR, if I've said that right, or it's Str, but Liam Stocker. Depends on where he plays this week. He's probably going to float. He's some time in the midfield. He did spend a bit of time on Harley Reid last week, but whether he stays back and plays on Gresham, we'll wait and see. Jack loves commenting with us. Bonner has to be under the microscope. We give him all the shit. We had a dig, but pre-season he was looking like he was going to add something for us, and he was looking clean. So let's hope he can do it again. And I think I like that comment as much like I think Evan, you may have touched on it, might have been Tom. The start of the year, he was looking damaging. He was looking like it was going to be an absolute steal. So he just needs that confidence to come back up and, be the player that we recruited him for. Jules commenting, I'm going to put Higgins under the microscope. He has a ton of talent that needs to shine more consistently. Is he a sneaky chance for All-Australian? Maybe the squad, but even for the 22, Jack Higgins. I saw a rolling All-Australian team today that had Tyson Stengel in it. I think Higgins has been better. Quick fire round, yes or no?
No,
he is. It stands.
No? Okay, shut me down. Perfect. Look, it's fair. Small forward's a hard position to play, and he's missed a couple of games. So can definitely be reasonable there. Let me have a look. Some comments. Ollie, who's usually on the show, but missed tonight. Our half forwards, Essendon's halfbacks killed us last time, so pressure needs to be higher. Can't let them get out of defence easily. Absolutely. We touched on that 23 inside, 50 tackles from last week. Glenn, Machito under the microscope, need 4 quarters, not 1. Absolutely. Yep. 100%. I thought he returned to that sort of 4-quarter performance last week. That goal he kicked was sort of reminiscent of the goal he did against Gold Coast last year where he snapped it from 40 out and blew the roof off. So definitely think that he can be a little bit better but more consistent as well. Evan, who's under the microscope for you this week?
Yeah, quickly with Higgins, I reckon he's more likely for like a sneaky best and fairish sort of thing, really respected in club with his performance this year. I think some of the stats they were showing with his impact on score involvements are off the charts, but only sort of internally because of how few scores that we're getting there. And we really felt that when he was away. But under the microscope, I'm going to double down on Hunter Clark here, specifically because we don't have the resources in the midfield this week to play a defensive game against their pretty strong midfield there. We're really going to have to sort of take it to them with Jones and Sinks and Hunter. Hunter Clark keeps having the weird pattern of a third of his disposals are score involvements and a third of them are turnovers. He He's just on both sides there. So I'm really hoping this week, with Henry out, that's 5 score involvements gone right there. Hopefully Hunter can pick up a little bit, turn some of those turnovers into real impact, so that we're not having to try and backtrack and defend constantly off our midfield forward entries.
Yeah, look, I was going down the same path for Hunter Clark, but again, it's not to say that he's been playing badly, but he's sort of getting to that space now where we need that consistency, we need that polish, we need that, creativity in the middle, especially against a strong midfield team that Essendon is. His poise, his patience, and his skill is going to be absolutely key for us on Saturday. For me, I'm gonna go with the speedsters through the middle, and that's both Brad Hill and Naz. I think this is a game they can really break open, really, use their kicking abilities. As I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, that Brad Hill is our best kick inside 50. Naz isn't too far behind. So we definitely need those two to be able to hit our forward targets lace out. The forward movement's been a lot better with King being gone. We haven't been as reliant to kick it to one spot. So, hitting our targets up forward is going to be key. And those two are definitely key to that. Looking at our list, what we've discussed today, can we cause an upset? I know it's the odds and, outside media noise have suggested it's going to be a pretty tight game. But given where Essendon's been all year, where we've been all year, they should be going in with a win. Is it possible we can, put half a nail in their coffin for the rest of the season?
It's scary to think if their height gets a hold of us, but otherwise, I reckon we can make it a really exciting, quick game. So I reckon we're in for a good chance.
Pete, agree or disagree with that?
I think this is a fantastic no-win situation for Essendon, because if they win, everybody says, well, you only beat St Kilda, you're still pretenders. And if they lose, then it just about breaks them. So I like to call, from our point of view, I like to call this sort of game a rock fight, because every inside 50 should just be everyone fly for it, bring it to ground, and then get the hell out of there. If we can put speed, put pace on the ball, keep them under pressure coming out of their half-back line, bring the ball to ground in their forward line, dry up those opportunities. The longer the game goes and the longer that we're in it, the more pressure goes on them. I reckon if we're in front at halftime, we can win this game. We'll win this game.
Are you saying that if Essendon's in front, that we've got no chance? Just reading between the lines there?
No, what I'm saying, yeah. I think if the early momentum goes Essendon's way, I think that they'll carry on with it. That belief will come in. They'll go, yeah, we're playing finals. Here we go. If we can get in their heads, and look, I know it's our home game, but if we can shut the Essendon fans up and kind of keep the momentum either neutral or going our way, I think that, they talk about it's a new group and a new club at Essendon, but this is still a club with essentially 20 years of nothing. So, I think those doubts start creeping into their head. And if we're in front, we'll win. If we're in front at halftime, we win this game.
Yeah, look, I like it. Tom, how important, and I touched on this via social media last week, and I got a bit of hate for it, but how important our home game against a strong supporter base in Victoria is it for our fans to get down to Marvel on Saturday and actually shut them up?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think, with the talk that the Saints want to play more, we want to play more games at the G. I think we've had this conversation, or people have had this conversation before. Like, you can't expect the AFL to go, yep, let St Kilda play more games at the G, but we're not getting enough fans at Marvel to fill out a deck. And I think this Saturday is really, really important. Essendon's going to come out full force. We know that. Carlton do the same thing. Any big Victorian club against St Kilda, like against us, makes us feel really shit. Like, you look at the Collingwood game in round 3, that was a big home game for us playing at the G. It felt like a Collingwood home game again. So, yeah, if anything, this is the one game that really, if you're a supporter, if you're a member, come down, support the boys. I think this is a bigger game than a lot of people think. Like, we're still mathematically a chance to make finals, as stupid as that sounds. So if this is a game to shut up Essendon supporters and really rub it in that they can't win anything to save their lives, this is it. And you look at the game against Adelaide, when we started off well, we shut up the crowd by the way we played, and obviously the supporters, and another thing over there, because we don't really get crowds down there as frequently. But yeah, if we can shut up Essendon's crowd and home base as quick as possible, I think that's one way to win. And I think also, Essendon thrive off their fans going nuts when they're up and about. They're really a downhill ski is probably the right term for it, because we see how quickly they can fall apart. We just, they lost 7 goals and a half against Adelaide, and Adelaide are not a great side this year. So if we start strong and really stifle their ability to score, and I think we can kill them the other way, that's probably the way to go. And we just have to look at the game against West Coast. It was dead empty, and I think it was half an hour before the game. It almost felt like it got packed up towards the end, and it almost felt like, we're winning comfortably now. Let's go to the footy for a half and watch the boys do their clinic on. But yeah, if we can get a massive crowd in on Saturday and really make it feel like a Saints home game, I think that'll be a big step in the right direction to really shut them up pretty quickly.
100%. You touched on the Collingwood game, and even more recently, the Sydney game felt like it was a Sydney home game in Melbourne. So our fans, if you've got the time and can get down to the game, get down there, support the boys. Chris has mentioned, Kenny's mentioned here, don't think we played a Victorian side in months, which I don't think we have either, but even more reason to get down there. Liam Stocker touched on it in our post-game interview that we had with him on Saturday last week. They're not throwing in the white towel or the white flag. They're not throwing the season away. They're not saying, look, season's done, let's just focus on next year. They're really committed to still playing through the game plan, still working through what the eventual goal is. And obviously that is to get back into finals and be extremely competitive in that. And Ross knows the plan that needs to be, the game plan that will get them there. I think we've got the game plan at the moment. We're just lacking the skills that's going to get us there on a consistent basis. So the players aren't throwing in the white flag. There's no reason for us as supporters to throw in the white flag either. It'd be nice to get down there. As I said, if Essendon does lose, it's almost half that nail into their coffin of the rest of the season. They've got a tough couple of games after us. So let's, cause a bit of pain and make sure we can get down there and support the boys. Are we winning this week? Evan, starting with you.
Yeah, I reckon so. We've got to give it a red hot go. I did just have a look there. It's been 8 weeks since we went up against a Victorian team, which that is bizarre. You probably don't get that very often. So it'd be good to beat another Victorian team once again. It's probably been the better part of the season there.
Absolutely. Before I jump to you, Pete, a few comments here that I just want to touch on. Cools has mentioned, be nice to shut Essendon fans up, but at the cost of Laylaw. Getting to flag contention more important. We need both Laylaw and Langford, and we can get them staying 15th. The way the ladder is at the moment, there is actually no real concerns of moving from 15th. And worst case scenario, we go to 14th. So I think Adelaide's pretty set on Draper, which is Sid Draper, who's playing. He was the captain for SA, which we'll touch on postseason. But I always prefer to win rather than a difference of a pick. Jack's comment, how do we feel about St Kilda Kangaroos merger rumours? It's not even happening. Not even going to ask the question because definitely not going to happen. There's a few comments wanting the priority pick and, those extra picks. Difference between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6 this year is absolutely minimal. There's a really strong draft. There's some really good midfield talent that's going to go all the way up until picks 30 and beyond. So missing out on one and getting the pick after isn't going to be too much of a difference. And Chris has given us his scoreboard. Saints 97, Essendon 81. Pete, are we winning this week?
Yeah, I think we can absolutely win it. It's going to be a really tough game. I think Adelaide showed the way to do it, but obviously Essendon are now ready for that. I'm hoping that we can come out pretty early and just shut them down completely, and let the demons creep into their head. Just quickly on the last couple of topics as well. In terms of the draft, yeah, from what I've seen, the top 10's pretty even, and I wouldn't be surprised if we did maybe some sort of deal with Gold Coast or Fremantle to double down on picks if we get a chance. And as for the ladder, I don't know what accounts you guys follow on Twitter, but there's an account that that posts like best possible scenarios for the ladder for all the teams. And I saw one, it was either today or yesterday, that if results go our way and we win by enough, I think we can finish in a 12-way tie for third. So if we can get our percentage high enough and win every single game for the rest of the year, and every other result in the competition falls our way, hey, we get a double chance. So let's go for it.
It's crazy how the ladder's turned out this year. It's absolutely even as even can be. I'm just looking through the comments, which I'll bring up in a sec. But Tom, your comments or your thoughts, for this weekend's game. We getting the chocolates?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Gut feel says we play well and win. But I think it'll be a close game. We probably had our 71-point win. We'll survive that for about 5 years and suffer through every other week where we win or lose by less than 10 points. But I think on the flip side, in Essendon's perspective, they don't strike me as a team that, you every week in the media, you hear like when a team loses by a close margin, they say, oh, they're going to come in next week firing and guns blazing. They want to make up for the week before. And of course, every team wants to do that. But Essendon don't strike me as a side that really bounce back that well. They seem to capitulate late in seasons in particular. And yeah, I mean, I really do hope that we do win. And I really want to see something, like Caminiti getting swung forward late, kicking a goal to win after the siren or something stupid like that. I could see him carrying on for about 10 years if he does that. So... yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens, but yeah, I think we win in a close one is my kind of bet.
Absolutely. And I think we're more than just a sneaky chance. I personally don't think Essendon is that good of a side. I think they're good, and they're probably good for that sort of 7 to 12 range. In relation to, they win a few good games, they lose games they shouldn't lose, i.e. last week against Adelaide. And hopefully again this weekend against us on Saturday. As we mentioned, get down to the game Saturday evening. It's a twilight fixture, which is a little bit of a bummer, but good win can mean Saturday night turns into an absolute perler of a night. So get down to Marvel, support the boys. Going to be a cracker game. Let's cause some pain for the Essendon fans as we try and make sure we finish this year on a high. For those that have been watching at home and sharing your thoughts and comments, in particular, Kenny, because I know you did mention one that you didn't get a shout out for. We love you, Kenny. We do appreciate all the comments coming through. Love interacting with you guys. To you three, Evan, Tom, and Pete. I know you've done it from the side of the road, Pete, so I do appreciate that. But again, I do appreciate you guys joining me on the Thursday nights discussing teams. That's all from us this week, guys. Get down to the game Saturday. And as always, go the Mighty Saints.
Go Saints.
Go Saints.